Hello, welcome back to Joel Explores Tech. For me, one of the key features of the retro tech hobby has always been recreating and enhancing the physical experiences we were able to have on many of these old platforms and systems. In the 80s, 90s, and 2000s, a number of different light gun peripherals came out for various systems, giving us new and interesting ways to experience some of these games. And that's always been a tricky thing to recreate on modern displays, as the light guns are closely tied to the technology that is used in CRTs for displaying the image. Recently, a friend offered to loan me his two Sinden Light Guns. The Sinden Light Gun is a modern solution that allows you to experience light gun games on modern displays, as it uses a camera and creates a border around the game image and uses that to track the position of the gun as you play. It works on LCD, OLED, and even projector screens. Specifically, I wanted to try it on the Mister platform. The Mister has Sinden cores created for the Master System, NES, Atari 7800, Super Nintendo, Genesis, and the PlayStation. And I believe some others are in progress. But you need those specific cores installed on your Mister to enable that border around the edges, and so that the light gun peripheral is supported. It just uses a standard USB hookup. So this should enable something I've been wanting to try for a long time, is playing on my projector screen. I've got a fairly basic setup right now, just a screen hung from the ceiling, but I wanted to try it out and see how it works with the Mister. I'm looking forward to trying it out on the big screen. So let's start exploring. I'll start off by running through some of the basic setup steps I needed. I went ahead and set up a second SD card for my Mister, as the setup steps provided by Sinden have you creating a new SD card from scratch, and I believe there's a custom version of the base Mister core as well as the individual cores that get installed. I'll add a link to the site with the steps in the description below. The basic idea is to get your SD card set up, connect to your Wi-Fi, and then you can run the update all script and copy over any of your ROMs. Additionally, you'll also need to update the firmware on your Sinden Light Guns to the latest version so that the Mister will pick them up. Some basic information about my projector setup. I'm using a Acer H5370BD. I bought it a number of years ago, and the resolution is 720p, which is fine for retro gaming, and seems to have pretty low latency. In my testing with a CRT and the projector screen in the same shot, it seemed to be about 6 frames behind at 240 frames per second, which would be a little more than 1 frame of lag. But I feel like playing at this large screen size makes up for any minor lag. Once you have the SD card all set up, you can go ahead and boot up your Mister. Go into the scripts folder, and if your Sinden Light Gun is connected via one of the USB ports, you can run one of these scripts that were set up by the startup scripts from Sinden. There is default, low resource, and max resource. The low resource is helpful for some of the more intensive cores like the PlayStation or Mega CD that need to transfer a lot of information from the SD card. I was noticing some stuttering when I would use the default. So if we run that, we see the script start up, and after a short wait, we should be ready to go. And at that point, we should get responses from the gun itself. And from there, we can use the gun for navigating the menus. This button here seems to be the default for the menu responses. So things like selecting within the menus. If we come over to here, we can go into one of the cores. One thing to note, they do have separate cores for the Sinden, so NES and NES Sinden, where the _ Sinden core is the one you'll want to select. The other thing to note is the action on the gun is actually the mapped to the menu button. You can use that to bring up the Mister menu, and then from there use the D-pad for navigating the menu. As far as the buttons on the controller itself, the 2 buttons on the front and the 2 buttons on the back, as well as the D-pad, can be mapped within each core. So depending on how you want to play each game, some of the games have grenades or different things that can be fired off with those different buttons. You can map those to your liking. Starting off with Duck Hunt, one of the classic NES light gun games, probably my first introduction to using a light gun. By default, the cursor is turned on the cores. I found it kind of distracting, so I later turned it off, but it does give you a good idea of sort of tracking you're getting. You'll see the white border around the core. That's one of the reasons they needed to make the special cores for the Sinden Light Gun, as it uses that visual border for its visual tracking with the camera that's on the front of the gun. Next up, I tried another of the classic NES light gun games, Operation Wolf, one of the ones I had as a kid. I actually found it a bit easier to play with the Sinden Light Gun on this large screen. Either that or I've gotten better over the years. It definitely was a lot more difficult playing back in the day, and I was able to fairly easily get to the second level, even on my first try playing here. The ability to remap the buttons were helpful for this game, as you need the second controller to use the grenades with the NES zapper. One item I did run into was the slide control on the bottom of the gun being mapped to the menu. It caused the menu to pop up a couple times while playing, so I would recommend mapping the menu to a different button. On the NES, I also tried out Hogan's Alley and Freedom Force, so I'll throw in some shorter clips of those here as well. While the Super Nintendo with its Super Scope wasn't super well known for light gun games, I did decide to check out a couple of the games on the Mister here. First up is the pack-in game that came with the Super Scope. This was a fairly simplistic game, but gave some good demo games to try out with your new Super Scope. I did notice a lot of the games on the 16-bit era consoles would have the target for calibrating your light gun. You might notice on the clip here, I'm seeing it as I'm editing, that the calibration was off with the detected target being slightly to the left of the cursor. I noticed this on a few of the cores. I'm not sure if it is something specific with the Sinden or the Mister cores, but overall didn't seem to affect gameplay that much, as I was able to be fairly precise in targeting. You can see here in the calibration from Battle Clash that the target is detected pretty much on spot with the target that is being displayed by the Mister core. This brings us to the PlayStation, the final system I tested on.
There's been a kidnapping. It's Rachel, the daughter of the president.
I never was able to use any light guns on the PlayStation back in the day, so these were all new experiences for me. Though I do think of this era as kind of the golden light gun era. Even most of the arcade games were often ported to the PlayStation. This is Time Crisis, the first of a trilogy on the PlayStation. I think the duck and cover mechanic worked really well with the extra buttons on the Sinden Light Gun here. Another game I tried on the PlayStation was Point Blank. It's kind of a more party game, almost like a Wii era mini-game type setup. This was a good example of the slowdown I was seeing when running the default version of the Sinden script. I'll let this play here a little bit to see if you hear some of the stuttering in the video, and even in the game a little bit. Maybe the music or other things that were streaming from the SD were having some timing issues. And then I'll also play another clip where I ran the low resource version of the Sinden, and you can compare. So that just about wraps up the look at the Sinden Light Gun running on the Mister FPGA. I think it's a really pretty good experience for how new the setup is. Still some bugs to be worked out, but overall I thought it was a really great experience, especially being able to play on a large projector screen like this, kind of something I'd always wanted to do growing up. You know, as a kid you had the smaller TV in your bedroom, and playing Duck Hunt on a 14-inch screen was not the best experience, even though it was pretty cool for the time. So I hope you enjoyed watching, and I'll see you next time.
Stranger! Howdy, stranger. We need your help. Mad Dog McCree's gang is taking over the town. The mayor and his daughter have been taken hostage out to Mad Dog's hideout. The sheriff, he's locked up in jail. We're going to have to get him out to help with the gang. Can you help? Good.